Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with you on this Thursday edition of Sidelines. We have a lot to talk about. Dudley, Dawson, Hogville.net checks in with us in the first segment. Gary Harris after that down in Tuscaloosa, Tide 100.9. Hour number 2, Billy Roberts going to check in with us from Atlanta, talk some college football, Atlanta Braves, and some Wimbledon, what's going on overseas over there in the UK and Britain. Man, American tennis has changed so much in the last 25 years. You go from John McEnroe, Jimmy Connors, Pete Sampras, Andre Agassi, just bam, all of a sudden, who are the top players? I think the number 3 or 4 ranked woman in the world is the daughter of the owner of the Buffalo Bills. So interesting. And hopefully in the fourth segment, Yancy Porter can join us. Wild time of the year, man. Everybody's getting ready. Media Day is going to come up starting Monday in Nashville. But look, we're going to be there live covering every one of the 14 teams that are there, trying to get with their coaches and the players that they bring. It'll be a lot of information. Some you already know, some you don't know. There's always something. Everybody always wonders, is there going to be another surprise like July of 21 when it was asked to Jimbo Fisher when he was talking about Texas A&M, do you know what do you know about the Texas and Oklahoma seeking membership into the SEC? And that really just sucked the air out of the room. Follow us on Twitter at Sidelines_live. Do that as well as subscribe to our YouTube channel where we're looking to grow that. And we're talking college football, basketball, baseball, recruiting. We're doing it 6 days a week. Again, 25 shows a month. That's a lot. And we talk with the best people. And Billy's on with us now. Dudley Dawson, Hogville.net. And Dudley, football magazines are out. I picked up another one, Lindy's, over at Hayes Supermarket in Wynn yesterday. We were over at Red River Ford Toyota, test driving the new Toyota Tundra. That was fun. But let's get with it, man, on the ECS House Industries. Our good friend Chad House, ECS House Industries over in Cherry Valley. That's between Vandale and Harrisburg, about 14 miles north of Wynn, making the better roller, the pulverizer, the better chopper, all kinds of farm equipment that you use. And I noticed Dudley and Billy driving over to Atlanta while we were over there with Mallory and Billy last week. You don't see the farmland once you get too far out of Memphis going east like you do over here. I think this area of Arkansas feeds half the world. But Dudley, hogs are getting ready for another season. Still summertime, as long as it's as hot as it is. But also we had the Major League Baseball draft. You talked last week a lot about how Dave Van Horn was reacting to that. Let's get an update.
Yeah, certainly, it came for 3 days, and Arkansas ended up having 7 of its players drafted, 7 recruits, and one portal transfer. So Arkansas took a hit, but that's what they expected. That's why they were got so many portal transfers. Committed and in here. It's the nature of baseball with the 11.7 scholarships that they have. You can't offer just a whole heck of a lot of money to a kid when you're trying to get a 40-man roster, with 11.7. But I think he feels good about what he landed. He's happy for the kids that are moving on. But when you have the number 1 rated class in the country, you're going to have some of the top ones come off the top there. That's just how it works.
Of all the schools out there in the draft, you mentioned that Arkansas tied Florida for the regular season SEC baseball championship, and only one of those players was drafted. And people say, oh, Dave Van Horn can't coach. We hadn't won a national championship. Again, that's amazing. That's an amazing statistic that nobody's really talking about.
Yeah, and he is used to it. He didn't like the fact, as we talked last week, that it takes so long. They tried to match it up with the All-Star Week festivities in Seattle this year. He thought it was at least 2 or 3 weeks later than it should have been. I'm going to have to agree with him on that because it, just makes you have to recruit from 24/7 in baseball. And, when you make it to the College World Series, and obviously that's just 8 teams a year, but there are a lot of teams that spend a lot of time leading up to that, trying to get there. It is a chore when you're a coach to try to do both at the same time.
It is. And you look at the popularity of college baseball. We talked about it. Now, back me up on this one. I was told that the most viewed baseball game on television so far this year was the America versus Japan challenge on baseball. After that, it was the College World Series National Championship. I mean, I don't think we've ever seen numbers like that for college baseball in the history of history.
Yeah, ironically, the ratings were down for the Major League Baseball All-Star Game this year. That's kind of been a case for a lot of the All-Star games in the major sports. But college baseball is certainly gaining in popularity. I think that there's a lot of things that go into that, and the game is probably at its highest right now.
It is, and you look at Razorback Baum Stadium holds 10 or 12,000, but the crowds are bigger than that because people are coming just to be part of the event. So I also look at the interest from TV, the pitch clock, and everything to make the game faster. What have we done? Is that something that you like? Because I don't think Butch Thompson was telling us that the strike zone certainly is different, what they call in the SEC, for example, versus what they call in the Pac-12. That inconsistency, it could be a problem, especially when you get to Omaha.
Yeah, that's one of the things about baseball, though. There's some intricacies that make themselves abundantly clear during the course of the season. I was kicking and screaming about the pitching clock and making batters get in there and all that at the start of the year. I was an old man telling people to get out of my yard and all that. But as the game went along, and you probably grew some new fans because the games didn't last as long. You were getting to and from the ballpark, still enjoying the game. So I begrudgingly came along and decided that I liked it after waving my bat in the yard and telling, like I said, the kids to get out of there.
Well, I like the one Chuck Oliver says, old man going out in his front yard yelling at the clouds. That's what we're not, you and I are the same age. I mean, we're not yelling at the clouds, but it's interesting. The pitch clock, it is making Major League Baseball go faster. The games are quicker. In terms of the best college baseball programs, Arkansas is one of them. I mean, every year they're going to be in the mix, but doesn't it show you what happened with NC State in 21? And then this year, how hard with TCU, they just went crazy. And I'd watched them in the Big 12 championship, but there are good baseball teams all over the country. Very few travel like LSU and Arkansas. I don't know an Ole Miss and Mississippi State. I guess
just keep going down the west there.
Yeah, but really it's you can't. I mean, as great a program as Florida has, they didn't travel like LSU. Now, granted, it's a further distance. I understand that. But Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Arkansas, and LSU, Omaha, that every day they pray for America and their country and their families. They pray that one of those 4 or all 4 will make it to Omaha because somebody on the show yesterday said they might make, I think it was Jacques Doucet from Channel 9 in Baton Rouge, covers LSU, and he was there. Said some of these companies or restaurants or businesses make 60 or 70% of their annual revenue in that 2-week period.
Yeah, and anytime that Arkansas has been there, and I've gone up and covered it, it's been an event. The major portion of the baseball fans in the state head up there. It's a nice little grueling run for 2 weeks. If you can make it, but it's well worth it. But it is close enough here, to most of the state of Arkansas that people can get up there pretty quickly. And it's become a thing because Dave Van Horn has made that an expectation at Arkansas.
Yeah. Here's another thing that is the thing, Lindy's. Here's KJ Jefferson on the front cover. And I got a list, and I'm going to go over this with you, Dudley, because what I like about you is, you're an Arkansas native. but you're tough on your school. You're tough on you're very like I'm to the point where people say give them a break when I talk about Auburn, but I'm going to be extremely critical always of them because that's my alma mater. But when I'm on this show, I'm objective. I'm going to be fair, and I love hearing. We have guests that cover all these SEC schools, ACC, Sun Belt, AAC. I love, Big 12. It doesn't matter to me. I love talking about it, but I'm going to run over a list, and I want to get your thoughts on. It was a list that David Schultz, our good friend down there at the GOAT in Lafayette, Louisiana, forwarded, and he's close with Jim Nagy, executive director of the Reese's Mobile Pieces Senior Bowl. Top 20 preseason senior quarterbacks. Isn't that amazing? These guys are all seniors. Let me give you the top 5. Now, the longer he stays in college and the further he gets away from Auburn, the more popular he is and the better he gets. And I'm talking Bo Nix is preseason number 1 in his 9th year at Oregon. Number 2, Jordan Travis, Florida State. Number 3, Michael Penix Jr., Washington. A bit of trivia here that only you and I and anyone listening and watching knows. There was a time Washington Husky football, 18 of their 19 starting quarterbacks over about a 40-something year period, all played in the NFL. It's amazing. Number 4, Jaden Daniels, and number 5, Joe Milton at Tennessee. What do you think about that top 5? And we'll break it down, go after that, because your guy's in that next group, but he should be higher.
Yeah, the KJ Jefferson, I think, has proven himself to be one of the top quarterbacks in the country. We've talked about the injuries that kept him from playing in a couple of games last year. And I realized that Joe Milton and the LSU quarterback have a world of potential and did have some really good games. But in terms of production and being able to lift their football team, I find it hard that you don't get KJ in that top 5.
Yeah, and his turnover ratio is so low, very low. And that right there is critical. And he's got Dan Enos coaching him. I'm curious, and I don't know who all the other coaches are of these quarterbacks, but that top 5, Bo Nix, Jordan Travis, Michael Penix Jr., Jaden Daniels, Joe Milton. Number 6 through 10, Austin Reed, Western Kentucky, Michael Pratt, Tulane. And he came back. Tulane, of course, we know won the Cotton Bowl. They beat Southern Cal. That was maybe the biggest win in school history. Number 8, Spencer Rattler, South Carolina. Number 9, Devin Leary, Kentucky. Number 10, KJ Jefferson, Arkansas. They got that ass backwards.
Absolutely. And I will tell you that Austin Reed is a young man that, I watched some last year, watched in the bowl as well. I think he's very underrated. I think he's a really good quarterback. It's probably going to be certainly a better pro than some of those guys because I think he's more oriented to the league than maybe he is to the college offense that a lot of these guys are running. Obviously this thing is subjective when you do this. Somebody who's watched the SEC probably would be a little higher on the quarterbacks in the SEC than they would in the other ones. But to have KJ 10th, I am sure that will be prominently told and posted, in the Arkansas locker room. I mean, if they still do that these days, they probably have computer generated things, videos or something these days. But the guy has always played well with a chip on his shoulder. I'm not saying he's the greatest quarterback ever, not saying that he's going to have a phenomenal season, but I'm saying he deserves to have a little bit more respect than 10th. Yeah.
Well, and Devin Leary came from NC State. Spencer Rattler was strong the last 4 games. We had Will Gunner over at the game in Columbia to cover South Carolina on earlier this week and talked about Spencer. He said last year on talk radio in Columbia and in the Gamecock fan base, they were like very underwhelmed with him. Then he came to life against Tennessee and Clemson and played with, they got beat by Notre Dame. But I just think I really get annoyed because I hear a lot of the criticism from Arkansas fans about KJ. And I guess if there's a legitimate criticism, and I want your thoughts on it, he does run a little too much and puts himself out there. And he missed a couple of games last year, a Mississippi State game on the road and was out in that LSU game, a 13-10 loss. And had he been healthy, Arkansas may have had equaled the 9 wins from the year earlier. I mean, that's just I'm just speculating.
Yeah, the competitive fire that he has, which is one of his biggest strengths, also at times one of his biggest weaknesses. We'll see, what Coach Dan Enos, the new quarterback coach here, who was the old quarterback coach as well, they will see how he uses him in an offense, suggestions on getting down, in different plays. But I do think that one of the things that probably factors into these rankings as well. And Spencer Rattler had, as you said, had a great back half of the season last year. He's far more of a promoter and somebody who gets a lot of attention than KJ.
Yeah.
Doesn't really draw that attention himself. And I'm sure that factors into these ratings as well.
Yeah, and I think Spencer Rattler came in out of high school, out of Arizona, I think the Metro Phoenix area, came to Oklahoma. And again, I wasn't a fan of his because of him being pulled those 2 Texas games. And I think it was not just performance, may have been attitude, but Shane Beamer knew him, had a connection with him from his Oklahoma days, brought him over there. And I hope he does well, but I know that in the summer leading up to the 21 season, right when NIL came out, I read a big story, I think, in The Athletic about Spencer Rattler was at a memorabilia conference in Philadelphia signing autographs for $150. I'm still waiting for somebody to get it on phone camera video of a college football player coming out of the locker room and some little kid, some boy or girl or a bunch of them coming up for an autograph, and he blows them off and says, "Give me $250." Wait till that happens. I mean, you talk about getting a bunch of fans mattered and wet hens, that's going to happen.
Yeah, and I do think that while I think it's okay that the kids and young men, I guess it is now, do have the opportunity to benefit from their name, image, and likeness, there are times when it becomes, as I've mentioned on the show, you got to go through the agent, you got to go through the lawyer. A lot of this stuff is more of a big business than it used to be. So I think that's one of the things that you have to keep into mind when you are an athlete who's on a big stage. You, as much as I hate to say it, you have a brand, you better watch what you're doing, or that brand can turn on you real quick.
It is. And I know we've talked a lot about it, NIL and the portal, their issues. I think you're already starting. Again, what people are not doing is giving a number of the kids around the country. There's a handful at most schools that are getting some decent money. Most of the kids are getting a little bit or nothing. And it's like Gary Harris said on the show, you may see a kid out, doing a Instagram, "Hey, we're eating Crystal Burgers." No, that's a great endorsement right there. I'm eating a steamer pack, 24 of them, and some grenades with shrapnel. That's the shrapnel is the French fries, and grenades are the hamburgers, and a bowl of mud is chili. That's what we always call a Crystal Trio. But I think that fans, and I always ask this to people, I know how you stand about it. I think college football is in great shape, and everybody loves to get all worked up and worried because they can't imagine, they cannot imagine where we're going to be. Go back to when we, in the late 60s, changed the substitution rules, and we integrated football. We did all this stuff. Oh, it just keeps getting better, Dudley. That's my take.
Yeah, I think on the field it does. The off the field stuff is something that I think drives some fans and some sports writers crazy. As it plays itself out now. But again, the product on the field is still really, really good, and certainly it is in the league that's behind me with this big logo.
Well, and now we got Commissioner Sankey's going to give his State of the SEC address, I guess, Monday morning before all the 14 coaches come out there. And I got to ask you this, Arkansas right there borders with Texas, and a lot of students from Texas at Arkansas. Texas has their own NIL rule. And while I absolutely respect the sovereignty of the 50 states, states' rights, the power is granted to the federal government through the states. But when it comes to NIL, I'm going to throw this one at you. The SEC said to Georgia and Mississippi, you got to change your flags or no conference championships in the states of Georgia and Mississippi. Well, they did it. Okay. Now, the state of Texas has their own NIL rule. They're saying we're going to do whatever we want. We don't care what the NCAA says. Do you, and I'm asking everybody this, do you think Greg Sankey's going to use the leverage and say, okay, that's fine. You're in Texas. That's great. But you are a member of the Southeastern Conference. And if we can't have uniformity for all of our 16 teams regarding NIL and all this other stuff, then we're not a conference. And maybe you should stay in the Big 12. You think he's going to say that? I mean, I'm not in those words, but they've got some leverage, I think.
Well, I don't know that he's going to say stay in the Big 12, but I do think he's going to do as much uniformity as he can. I mean, that's the way it's supposed to work. A lot of people would say Texas has ran roughshod over their last two conferences, and I'm certainly that they will try to do whatever they can to get as many advantages in their new conference as they want to. But Sankey, I think, has been a really good commissioner for the most part. I think that most of his decisions, have played to the benefit of the SEC. But it's a double-edged sword here that he's going to have to deal with, and that's why that's why he makes a nice check.
Yeah, and I think that people, I'm looking around the rest of college athletics. What other conference is in a position that the SEC is in right now? And you go back to, and Billy Roberts will be on with us in the second hour, but he brought something up. Harvey Schiller, former commissioner of the SEC, when he would go to the big college football, meetings with all the power conferences, Group of Five, Power Five, they didn't call it that back in the late 80s. He said, where do I sit? And the Big Ten and the Pac-10 at the time said, well, we always sit up front. The SEC sits in the back. And Harvey Schiller, being a brigadier general in the U.S. Air Force, I believe, Vietnam veteran, he's 83 years old. Love to get him on this show. I believe issued a memo that said, from here on out, we will sit on the front row. That's that. And he's also the one who went to the NCAA and said, I'm looking at the rule book here, and I don't see where it says we can't have a divisional format, which ultimately would lead to a conference championship game. Is he the greatest visionary? Does he get all the credit? Not really. Roy Kramer does, but it was Harvey Schiller that started all this.
Yeah, you got it. I mean, you got to give credit where credit's due, and certainly the genesis of ideas. Sometimes people get lost in the presentation of it, and I think that it's important to go back and you just do that with baseball. Did Abdul Doubleday really create the game, or was it somebody? Did Abdul Doubleday just get credit for it? You can find many different. Watch Ken Burns baseball, you find many different things that you want to go there. But I do think that it's one of those situations that the genesis of the idea should always be trumpeted more than the presentation. Well,
and we go back to, you think about baseball. 4 years after the war between the states, Abner Doubleday is credited with starting baseball, 1869. That's also the year November 6th of 1869 in Princeton, New Jersey. Rutgers 6, Princeton 4. College football started. It's amazing that they started those two. And then football, 1890s? Pro football now was maybe early 1900s.
Yeah, and by the way, I think in both those games, especially the Rutgers one, the fans were upset because it was on ESPN Plus instead of regular ESPN.
Yeah, that's right. And speaking of that, there were 25 football players on each side of the line of scrimmage. 25 for Rutgers, 25 for Princeton. It was like a rugby scrum. And you go back, think about college football. Here's another one. Tony Barnhart talks about this and lays out the case in Sewanee 1899 Unraveled. It's a great documentary. Our friend Norman Jetmanson and David Cruz spent 6 years producing. And really, it should be required mandatory watching before the start of every football season by every football fan in America. Go to Sewanee Unraveled, Sewanee1899unraveled.org and get a copy of it. I love it because in 1906, 19 college football players were killed playing football. And Tony Barnhart said that the governor of the state of Georgia called a special session of the legislature and they were looking at potentially abolishing college football. The mother of the fallen player from Georgia, appealed on the floor of the State House in Atlanta and said, that's not what my son would have wanted. And he loved football. And it's tragic that he's dead, but they did move on. But that ultimately led a few years later to Theodore Roosevelt establishing and getting the wheels spinning to start the NCAA. And here we are in 2023. The NCAA looks like they're gasping for air for survival.
Yeah, I do like the ideas of new president. Maybe some of that will take hold, but really what the power of the NCAA is nothing like it was back in the 70s or 80s. Wasn't complete back then, but it certainly seems to have a grass slipping here in this certain decade.
Yeah. All right. Now back with your Razorbacks. You look around the conference and you look in recruiting and you follow recruiting. Otis Kirk at hogville.net is all over it. I keep seeing top 5, top 6 of these kids. Arkansas is in a lot of them. I want you to lay out a case for Arkansas fans who are like, well, we're way up in the northwest corner. How are we going to get these players in the deep south? I mean, other than, relocate, go hire coaches who have relationships down there. I can't remember a time when Arkansas has more coaches with deeper ties in the deep south for recruiting. That's big.
Just to be fair about it, I do think that Arkansas has done a really good job with the 2024 class leading up to the last month or so. In the last month, out of 7 announcements, they've only got 1. And, including Brian Huff, the linebacker who was one of the 4-star guys here who ended up choosing Missouri yesterday. So I don't think it's an absolute home run. Certainly, I do think, as I said, they did some really good work early on. Going to have to finish it off with some linebacker recruiting and some other situations. But I do, as we've talked about before, the footprint and the recruiting reaches that this staff has certainly are, I think much more than what usually has been around here. But proof is in the pudding, as they say.
Yeah, and especially on offensive line, when Sam Pittman is your head coach, that is always going to be something you don't have to worry about. But Razorbacks, here's a question here. You talk about the wide receivers, a tall group of wide receivers. And you got Rocket Sanders. That 1-2 punch, KJ Jefferson, Rocket Sanders, might be the best in the SEC. And again, you look at tight end. That's something Arkansas uses a lot. Trey Knox has gone on to South Carolina, and he never really could find his right position. Let's talk about that tight end room and what Dan Enos likes to do with the tight end. I think when he was at Alabama, didn't he have the big tight end from Autauga, Alabama, that had 206 yards in the national championship game against Clemson?
Yeah, and I do think Arkansas has reloaded at tight end. Got 2 freshmen, Shamar Easter and Luke Haas, that both I think are going to be very, very good football players, and both I think will contribute this year. They've got some other guys in that room that I think will allow them the opportunity to use a lot of 2 tight end sets, and for both of them to be weapons, not only blockers. So I think that all of them are going to come together and make that position better than it has been the past couple of years. When, as you said, you actually converted a wide receiver into your starting tight end. It's supposed to go the other way. It's supposed to go the other way.
Yeah, and I'm bringing Gary Harris with us right now down in Tuscaloosa. And, I tell you, the tight end, and Dudley, that was kind of the undoing of Gus at Auburn. He kept saying, we're going to use the tight end. We're going to use the tight end. And Gary, I went blank here for a second. The big tight end for Alabama, I think he had 206 yards in the national championship game. O.J. Howard, out of Autauga. And that game, talk about a game that made a guy a lot of money. I mean, there are tight ends, guys, who don't have 200 yards receiving in their careers. And was Dan Enos on that staff at Alabama at the time?
I think he might have been on the staff. Kiffin was still the offensive coordinator then.
Yeah, in 16,
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, but Dan Enos being at Arkansas, Dudley, I think will be it'll be big. And we're going to talk some more college football here. And this is the hour number 1. And this is Gary Harris, Tide 100.9 in Tuscaloosa, and Channel 23 WVUA. But
pouring down rain here this morning. It is an ugly morning, by the way.
We had it through the night.
Dogs
were not happy at all here.
Yeah, I had to get out and drive in it this morning. It's rough.
Yeah,
that's why I got the station early. I didn't want to be driving it on the link.
I got up this morning and went outside, and within a couple of minutes it started raining. It's at least it's cloudy over here and in parking, and I still see the guys irrigating out here. But I'm going to tell you what, Dudley, I know you got to get going. You said to a big 7-on-7 there this morning. You got to get out in a few minutes, but let people know how they can follow you and keep up with you. You going to make it up to media days in Nashville this week?
Nope. We'll have Otis there, I think. But I'll be handling some more baseball and some high school stuff here as the month continues on. But hogville.net is our website where we cover all Arkansas sports. Fearless Friday is who I'm working for this morning as we have a big 7-on-7 tournament at Shiloh Christian. It's got a lot of really good teams from this area and around the state. And then, again, you can continue to follow my amazement at how bad the St. Louis Cardinals are via Twitter at Dead Sports.
Yeah, and I was in Atlanta last week, and I heard about how great the Braves are. I'm ready for the Cardinals to be good again.
They are.
Yeah. But I mean, our fan base is Cardinals and Braves, and it's and Tampa. I mean, we got people, a lot of Tampa people. But Dudley, look, man, always love having you on here. 200 high schools in the state. You're close to visiting all of them, and hopefully some of them are going to get the Tiger air conditioned helmets if the coaches.
That's what we're working on. That's what we're working.
All right. We will talk to you here in the next few days and have you on next week from Nashville.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you so much. Gary, we were going over the list of the top quarterbacks in college football. And it's interesting. It was a list that David Schultz had talked with Jim Nagy, executive director of the Senior Bowl, about. And to me, I guess the couple of things that really stick out are, Alabama doesn't have a quarterback on there. Can you remember as an Alabama fan, and I went through Claiborne County last week, actually Sunday afternoon, coming back from Atlanta. Beautiful over there in the Talladega National Forest. But I was thinking of you. Alabama's run of Jalen Hurts, Tua, Mac Jones, and Bryce Young. Do you ever remember Alabama having 4 quarterbacks in succession anywhere close to that?
Well, I was born in 64. I mean, I guess you could go back maybe to the Namath, Sloan, Stabler, Hunter, era maybe. That's a pretty good run. And let's see, different style of play, obviously, and they weren't, at the level in terms of throwing the ball, but all the wishbone guys in the 70s were Bryant, Gary, Richard Todd, Gary Rutledge, Jeff Rutledge, Stedman Shealy, Walter Lewis. So, but no, as far as awards, NFL, draft picks and all that, no, this has been the best run. And you were asking when's the last time you went back to Alabama and didn't really, had quarterback questions. It would be 2016 when Blake Barnett was kind of slotted to be the starter, and everybody felt like it was his job to win or lose. And, he didn't win it. He got the start against USC, but I think everybody realized pretty early on that Jalen Hurts, true freshman, still the only true freshman to start a season for Nick Saban. When Hurts came in there, either late in the first quarter or early in the second quarter, and, fumbled his first snap, but went on and took over that game and became the starter. But going into that year, there were a lot of questions. So no, since the Jalen, Tua, Mac Jones, Bryce Young run, this is the first year in a while that there have been quarterback questions. But as I've said on my show, there have been a lot of questions going back to when, Saban inherited John Parker Wilson, and he did a really good job, in 2007, 2008. But 2009, nobody really knew, if Greg McElroy was going to be a good quarterback or not. And, but he was the perfect quarterback for that team. Their ability to run the ball and play dominant defense, and his IQ, and we've talked about this before, Rob. Everybody talks about the term game manager like it's a bad thing. The first thing a quarterback's got to do is manage the game. I don't care how talented they are, but Greg McElroy did a great job, for 2 years. But then, 2011, people forget because they remember AJ, but they don't remember Phillip Sims. There was a serious quarterback battle in 2011, and there were a lot of questions even going into the season about whether the quarterback would be McCarron or it would be Phillip Sims. And they both played in that first game, and then they went to Penn State. And I remember picking Alabama to lose that game in 2011 because of the quarterback questions. And then AJ kind of established himself. And then for 3 years, he was the guy. But then in 2014, they remember this, Rob. Alabama played Blake Sims as the quarterback. He beat out Jake Coker, the Florida State transfer. Blake Sims had been a running back. He had been a wide receiver. He'd been a defensive back. And, Lane Kiffin in his first year worked magic. I mean, magic with Blake Sims. And then the next year, Cooper Bateman started against Ole Miss. So it took Jake Coker a couple of games. So, recently there's been no quarterback questions. But if you go back over Nick Saban's tenure, there have been several seasons that Alabama's gone into the year with quarterback questions, and they've had to answer them during the season. And certainly that will be the case this year. Regardless of which one of the three wins the job, there are questions about every one of them.
Well, there always are. And, when Rodney Orr was on the May Veterinary Clinic Tighter Insider Report Tuesday, he was talking about this, about Jalen Milroe, what a phenomenal athlete he is. He goes, look, I'm not saying he's Lamar Jackson, but he's big. He's 6'2.5", 220 something, and he can run legitimate 4.5 speed, maybe a little bit faster. Gary, again, satellites are 50,000 feet up in the sky, or 10,000 million miles away. They can see all kind of images, but they cannot find out the intent of the troops on the ground. That's what the local media do. That's why, when I want to know what's going on with the Oregon football program, I don't go to some national deal. I go to a station, if I can, in Oregon. What were you doing when Alabama was getting ready to play San Diego State in basketball? I know because you told us. You were calling out there and talking to TV guys, media guys that cover these guys.
Right.
And they just have, and it's not that national people aren't good. It's just that we're discounting the value of local media coverage. So, Alabama and Gary, you do a great program Tuesday nights. Why doesn't every school have people doing what y'all do? I don't see it. I don't see something like Tighter Insider TV, which is every Tuesday night at 6:30. I think it's great. I don't care who you're a fan of. The content, the flow, and it's packed. 22 minutes of college sports content.
Well, I think, Rob, a lot of it has to do with, markets. Even though we're in the Birmingham television market, we're located in Tuscaloosa. We're owned by the University of Alabama, so we're Alabama centric. So it makes sense that when there's a website with Rodney Tighter Insider, that, hey man, let's do a Tighter Insider TV show. So in a lot of markets, now you're right, there are some that could do, but you're focused on several different teams. But you're right in Knoxville, and I know they do some specialty stuff. Baton Rouge, there are others. Where you focus on one school that you could say, hey, we're going to do, the Vol Quest TV show or the Tiger Bait TV show or whatever. And, why those aren't done, I don't know. A lot of it, too, has to do with, I started Tighter Insider TV, Rodney and I started that in time for the, I want to say the 2000 or 2001 season. So, at that point in time, the internet was not what it is now. And now a lot of these shows that we're talking about are available on the internet. It's just broadcast TV, which is, where, growing up, you and I got all of our video in those days was from television. Now, you have all the websites, the networks, the team sites that cover these teams that do shows. But I'm with you, Rob. I still think there's something special about being able to turn on the TV and watch a TV show in your living room on your big screen television. And that we have seen sports programming in particular, unless it's, national, local sports programming has been diminished. You don't, Channel 6, WBRC in Birmingham, the most powerful, famous television station in the state of Alabama, they don't even have a sports department anymore. They don't even have a sports department. They just do their news people cover some sports, and they do still do a Friday night high school football show. But as far as the sports department, don't have one anymore. So sports programming on television in general has gone, unless it's, national or one of these regional networks, local sports, they've cut back to the point where a lot of markets that used to have 5 and 6 person sports departments, have 1 or 2 people. We have 2. We had at one time, we had 5 at WVUA 23, 5 full-time sports people. Now we've got 2. Now we have obviously we have a great base of students that help us a ton. But as far as full-time sports people, it's Stu McCann and me. That's it. So that has a lot to do with it too. But no, I'm glad you mentioned Tider Insider TV. I had that concept. Like I said, I didn't even know Rodney at the time. We were both kind of just starting out here in Tuscaloosa, but and I had some discussions way back in the day with Shannon Terry when he was first getting Bama Online hooked up about maybe doing something with them, but they weren't really running yet. And Rodney had moved to Tuscaloosa and was based in Tuscaloosa, and that Tider Insider name just resonated with everybody, even then. Yeah. And so I was like, I called Rodney and was like, you interested in doing a TV show here on the local station? Tider Insider TV. And as I said, I didn't know him well. We had met at some football games, but it weren't like we were, pals or anything. But, I had gotten him to do a couple of recruiting segments on television, and that had gone really well. So, I called him up. The next thing we had, he was tied in with us, and Tider Insider TV started. And again, I can't. It was either 2000 or 2001. But anyway, it's a staple. There aren't many television programs that have been running for 22, 23 years, Rob. But there's this not. One has.
Yeah, and I love the local coverage. Again, you can get on your laptop and go anywhere you want to in the country every day, every night. And we were over in Atlanta last week. Atlanta is a massive TV market, but you think about the sports coverage. They get only 4.5 minutes. Tider Insider, and the beauty of it is you also do a radio show 5 days a week for 2 hours on Tide 100.9. So you're getting the message out. But I'll tell you what it is. You look at ESPN. They just went through like their 5th or 6th round of cutoff, of cutbacks. And there were 20 years ago, 100 million people hooked up to the cord, subscribed to ESPN. That number now is 73 million. That's still a lot. But see, there's 25 million plus on ESPN Plus, which is really, really growing. But I think every time when I look for guests on this show, I got lucky because of the connection to you and to Rodney, but I knew about both of you. I knew about Rodney from working with Alabama fans that all subscribe to Tider Insider. And you also, if you want to know about a high school football player, go to Gary Harris, and you and Rodney, because you're seeing them. You cover a 50, 75 mile area of high school football?
Yeah, maybe even a little more than that. We because we're in the Birmingham TV market, even though we're based in Tuscaloosa, we still will go to Birmingham and cover games, and not necessarily. Yeah, sometimes we will even get into Northeast Alabama some. So I'd say probably as far as our actual highlights on Friday night, probably about 100 miles. Yeah. The reach is probably about 100 miles.
Hold that thought. We're going to take a quick commercial segment here. We're going to be right back with Gary Harris talking about Alabama and high school football in the state of Alabama and local media coverage. I'm telling you, folks, it will come back. We're going to go full swing. The pendulum is going to go back. Getting your news from the national deal is like tapas, little hors d'oeuvres and appetizers. Hey, we're from the South. What do we want, Gary? Give me an M3, a meat and 3. Some people want an M16. That's a meat and 16 sides. So we'll be right back. More on Sidelines.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Gary Harris, you're talking about local, coverage of high school football. Preseason, I know there's recruiting lists everywhere, but who are some of the top players in your coverage area that you've seen? You watched them from maybe 8th, 9th grade on up, because there's a lot of really good football in your ADI.
Yeah, I'll start with a couple of Power 5 commitments. TJ Banks is a corner down at Hillcrest that previously played at Northridge, and very talented kid. Was talented in like you said, in the 9th grade, and had a coaching change at Northridge, and I guess things didn't necessarily go the way that he and his family wanted to go. So they moved into the Hillcrest area, and he'll be at Hillcrest this year. But he's already committed to Ole Miss, and again, he's clearly an SEC talent. And another kid to watch for, and we were really kind of surprised, this commitment, back in mid-June kind of came out of nowhere. Tuscaloosa County High running back Kevin Riley, who really kind of burst on the scene last year, but phenomenal SEC talent, committed to Miami. And I don't know if he had a firm offer from Alabama yet, but I know Alabama was certainly, evaluating him and liked him, as well as a lot of other SEC schools. And Kevin Riley committed to Miami and seems to be firm with that. I don't know if there's some NIL money there available or what happened, but and obviously Mario Cristobal, of course, clearly knows this area, having served on Nick Saban's staff for several years. So, but those are two just right off the top of my head, just because of the the fact that they've already committed to Power 5 schools, one in the ACC and one in the SEC. But we always have a good supply of players, both, Power 5 caliber players. And then, this area is well known for feeding, Division II and Division I AA schools, Gulf South Conference prospects. And one more that I want to mention. Yeah, that's really, this is a guy, and I want to make sure that I get his name right, because this is not a school that traditionally turns out high Power 5 prospects, but William Sanders over at Brookwood High School. And Brookwood has struggled for many, many years to find relevance in high school football. Yeah. And but I'm telling you something, this William Sanders is a road grader. And he is a guy that you need to watch because he's at Brookwood. He's not going to get the notoriety maybe that he would be if he were at some other schools. But Mike Bramlett's the head coach there. Mike Bramlett has done a terrific job. He'd been the defensive coordinator at Hillcrest. He took the Brookwood job. His son, Jay, is the punter at LSU, had been the punter at Notre Dame. His son, Jeff, was a great pitcher here at Alabama and still is in the minor leagues. But Mike Bramlett has brought a winning attitude to Brookwood. But this William Sanders, this is a name I'm giving your listeners and viewers that they may not be familiar with. Look him up. Offensive lineman at Brookwood, again, kind of flying under the radar. But I'm just telling you what, man, when you watch this kid's, as they say, the film does not lie, or in this case, the video. Watch out for him. I think he is going to he's going to get an Alabama offer. And I feel like, if he does, then obviously that they're going to be the team to beat. But, the rest of the schools on his list right now, are like Appalachian State, Cincinnati, Duke. But I think the entire SEC, particularly if Alabama, gives him a firm offer, you know how that goes, because his national ranking right now is not that high. His ranking in Alabama is not that high. But watch William Sanders as he gets into his senior year. He's a really good football player.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny right now. Waller and Susan May are listening. They're in Tuscaloosa at the May Veterinary Clinic and talking about their son John. Is a hell of a football player. He's over there at Northridge, and I watched him play over there at Paul W. Bryant and Cottondale last year. We went over there and watched that game. Really good football. And I mean, if I'm John May, you want to go walk on at Auburn, or Mississippi State, or somewhere. I mean, you see a lot of kids, and you've talked to a lot of them. A lot of people think somebody's undersized or whatever. You ever notice that the ones that do it said, I didn't listen to anybody. I just went with my gut instinct or whatever. But I watched last year. You had Wilkin Formby on that team at Northridge, 6'8". I mean, and he wasn't, 6'8" fat Albert.
No,
he was put together well.
Yeah.
He's gifted physically, and growing up, with access to the casa and all, Taco Casa, he takes care of himself. I mean, you just don't see many 6'8" kids at that level. But Northridge, and I know Barry Sanderson now is the basketball coach over there. And I love listening to that show in the morning with him and Wimp Sanderson, who, by the way, may have given the greatest comeback ever when some snarky report. How many of your players have graduated? As many as wanted to.
All of them that wanted to. Yeah. Word on John May. I don't know where he ranks as a prospect. I know he'll hit you. I've seen enough of his, I know he's a really good high school football player. I'm guessing, I don't have his profile up, but I'm guessing, maybe 5'10", 195, maybe 200 pounds, somewhere in that range. But I could be wrong. So if his parents are listening, I'm sorry. I'm just doing that.
No. I know. I mean, he gets up about 4:30 and works out.
I know he's a really good high school football player. And like you said, if your dream is to play SEC football and you're in a position where your parents can afford that the school side of it, I'm with you. If that's your dream, go do it. Walk on at one of these schools, because he'll definitely be good enough to get a walk-on opportunity. But I'm guessing too, that he might get some scholarship offers at that level that we were talking about. The level below Division I. So, those kind of players that are really good high school football players have options. They do. And particularly if they're in a good financial situation. I mean, that's just the reality of it. If you're in a situation where you don't have the means, then you're going to have to look at trying to get a scholarship somewhere. But if you've got the financial means, and it's your dream to play at Auburn, or it's your dream to play at Georgia or whatever, go for it. Because it's, I've talked to some walk-ons, and I'm not talking about the few walk-ons that have risen to the position where they really got to play. But I know a lot of walk-ons who said, man, listen, I wouldn't trade my experience for anybody. I never really got to play much, but I was a part of the team. And, I love that. I got my degree from the school I wanted to get it from. So, I think that's something that goes a little under the radar now. The way things have changed is that, we've talked about this before, Rob, and I got a couple more minutes before I have to go, but you had kids that used to grow up dreaming of playing for a certain school, and, they held to that dream. And even if they weren't great players, if they got that opportunity, they took it. Now, it's all about, oh man, you don't want to go sit on the bench somewhere. You go somewhere. And I get that too. If that's, if you say, hey man, I want to make sure I go somewhere where I'm a contributor, but if it's your dream to play at a certain school and you get to be a part of the team, there's something to be said for that too, even if you never really get, the opportunity to play a lot. So,
yeah, it is. And then a couple of questions. Well, this is one of my listeners down in Fairhope said his son played at NBA. They played against Hewitt-Trussville. Your thoughts on that program? And I think it's one of the historically stronger programs in the state.
Really good program. Hewitt-Trussville's got a lot of talent, and Mbakwe, the defensive back that's committed to Alabama, is he may be at Clay Chalkville. I have to double that. Rob, do you know right off your bat?
There's so many schools that have merged, it gets crazy. It gets really crazy.
But anyway, to get back to Hewitt-Trussville, really good program. Like a lot of programs in Birmingham, Jalen Mbakwe is at Clay Chalkville. But like a lot of those good programs in the Birmingham area right now, everybody's kind of playing second fiddle to Thompson. That's just the reality. Yeah. The way that for many years they played second fiddle to Hoover, but now Thompson's trumped Hoover. But there's a lot of those programs in Birmingham have high level talent, and Hewitt-Trussville certainly one of them. And Josh Floyd there does a really good job as a head coach.
Yeah, he does. Gary, look, thank you so much. I wanted to get into I'm going to start doing this with you next week. your favorite memory, and I'm going to throw a game at you, what you remember about it. I was going to say the 76 Liberty Bowl when Alabama came out. It was 9 degrees.
I got a lot on for that one.
Cut off shirts.
Yeah.
It was 9 degrees.
Yeah.
And UCLA guys were like, oh, my God. And 38-6 later. But how do they follow you and listen to your show?
All right. Tide109.com is the website for the radio station. You can stream us there, or you can get the Tide 109 app, which I'd really encourage you to do. And then you can take us any place. I'm on Twitter at Gary Harris _WVUA. Also WVUA 23, the TV station that I work for. We stream our newscast and Tider Insider Live as well at WVUA23.com. So there you go.
Yeah, it is great stuff. I'll be watching it. And if you miss it, you can always find it on YouTube. Gary, have a great show, and we will talk to you next week.
Thanks, Rob.
You bet. Gary Harris, Tide 100.9 WVUA, Channel 23 in Tuscaloosa. And I'll tell you something. It's not that I don't like national media guys. That's not the point. It's just that so many of them are arrogant, and they're elitist, and they're full of split. They don't have time to, the local guys are so genuine. The local TV coverage guys. I mean, listen, one of my mentors who's helped me a ton, Dave Cody, listens every day on this show out in Bellingham, Washington. Longtime sports anchor in Austin. And he was mentored by people like Phil Snow and Jim Fife. We all have people that mentor us. Gary Harris doing the local thing. And I'm sure he's had opportunities to go national. He could do, he and Rodney Orr, watch that show. Look at the amount of time that they put into it. Okay. Again, Bama fan, Georgia fan, Ole Miss fan. It doesn't matter. Quality is quality and content. Rodney Orr is so prepared. Again, he's like a great trial lawyer going to court, going to trial. They have so much information every week on that show. Hey, this first hour has been brought to you by RumbleBoxingGym.com. We're going to be over there today about 12:30 to see Ann Camp Lee and the group at 1835 Union Avenue, corner of Union and McLean. What an incredible workout. 15 3-minute sessions in there. Jumping jacks, star jacks, burpees, planks, dips, lots of weightlifting, dumbbells. Then you switch over there to the other side of the room with the 250-pound punching bags. They're hanging teardrops like Hershey's Kisses, and you will punch those bags. You will get an incredible workout. I will compare it to, I love to swim. It's like land swimming. Incredible workout. Open every day of the week. Go out there. They have student discounts. They have corporate discounts. Follow them on our website. Go to www.sidelines.live, and you will find the hyperlink to RumbleBoxingGym.com. 1835 Union Avenue in Midtown Memphis. But really, it's just, I love to hear what Gary was talking about, the local kids. Now, I went last year to that Northridge and Paul W. Bryant in Cottondale. I looked like a small college campus. What a stadium. Huge crowds out there. I mean, a lot of pride. Of course, at Paul W. Bryant High School, you're damn right they're going to have a lot of pride. But those are really good football teams in that area. And again, I mentioned a guy like John May. I remember when I was in school, the freshmen that would come in, if they felt the coaches maybe thought they were a little undersized or they were worried about them, go play special teams. That's what they would do. You get out there on special teams, on that kickoff team, on the wedge, you're running downfield like a missile, hitting somebody, knocking the ball loose, forcing a turnover. That's how you get attention. So you mentioned, John May. Again, that's one individual. But think about the number of walk-ons. I talk a lot about Jay Stubbs, walk-on. 5'7", 5'8" at Alabama, never started a single game. But he's got that credibility. And so anybody listening, if you're thinking about playing college football, walking on, go for it. You'll miss 1,000% of the shots you never take. And I look at high school football is what feeds college football. You got a soft coach and a soft program, you're not going to win many games. You may not win any. I'm going to tell you, kids that wake up at 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning have that organic drive inside of them to go work out. You can't scream at people and get them to do that. That's got to come from within. What is character? It's when the coach can't see you in cross country on the trails that you're not walking, that you're not loafing. You're doing what you're supposed to do. God knows what you're doing. You put your head on the pillow at the end of the day. God knows if you've given 110%. That's how that stuff works. Very, very simple. Not hard at all. And, I look and I listen to Gary, and I love to listen to his show on Tide 100.9, Channel 23, him and Rodney Orr, Tider Insider. They're covering these kids. You're getting so much more color and perspective on high school football when you're listening and watching the local coverage. They know these kids. A lot of them they've known since they were, in middle school, and they've followed them. But you see more and more kids now are being offered scholarships in 8th and 9th grade. What you do at that stage of your life follows you around like your DNA. And I think that people need to remember college football teams, as Franz Beard says, you don't have all a bunch of Wally Cleavers, a bunch of Eagle Scouts on there. You got all kind of personalities. You got some psychopaths. You got some crazies, as Franz always says. But it takes different personalities, and that's a term, just an expression, a descriptive term. But you damn sure want people that are vocal and that are good and they're loud. But I'm gonna tell you something. When I look at it, and I say to myself, what makes me tune in to watch something on TV sports? I like the charismatic characters. Billy Roberts on with us over in Brookhaven, right next to Buckhead, not Atlanta. Billy, I'm going to talk real quick some college football with you, some Atlanta Braves, but something you know a lot about. You're a 4-5 tennis player. Is tennis. I'm kind of was leading into you coming on. We go back, and you mentioned this the other day. The Australians with Rod Laver and Newcomb and Stan Smith and all, they had their run. Then we had the great Americans, Jimmy Connors, John McEnroe, Pete Sampras, and Andy Roddick and Andre Agassi. They were good, but they weren't Connors. They weren't McEnroe. You can't be serious. I mean, I missed that. I miss mean tweets from the president.
Yeah. Well, Agassi, early in his career, he had a huge breakthrough. I mean, I think he got to the semis at the U.S. Open as a teenager. And then he kind of flattened out a little bit, and he got to some major finals but didn't win them. And then, of all places, he had a breakthrough at Wimbledon. He won his first major at Wimbledon on the grass against Ivan Isavic, which is a guy that's born to play on grass. So, and then, he started winning majors after that. So he had like a mental breakthrough at some point. So Agassi, you could kind of call him an early arriver and also a late bloomer all in one. But ultimately, he won 7 or 8 majors. So he had as good a career as McEnroe did. But he didn't have that, early sustained dominance like Connors and McEnroe. It took him a little while. Sampras, on the other hand, won the U.S. Open at 19 years old, which was a shocker. He announced his arrival, on the big stage, and went on to win 14 majors. And, so he had sustained consistent excellence throughout his whole career, and probably had a little bit to do with Agassi being a bit of a late bloomer. So those two guys, carried the torch for American tennis for a long time. And Roddick, to a certain degree. But after that, things kind of fell off the table. And there's been a lot of guys that have gotten to the 3rd, 4th round, every once in a while a quarterfinal. But that's not what American tennis fans are used to. We're used to guys, playing and winning a Wimbledon final or U.S. Open final. And it just really hadn't happened in a long time. I think Roddick won the U.S. Open in 2003. And that's, if I'm not mistaken, that's the last major that an American has won on the men's side. That's 20 years ago. That's 3 lifetimes in the tennis world.
Well, there's several things I'm going to throw at you that have caused that. Number one, we've got a bunch of indoor, lazy, emasculated kids in this country that don't do a damn thing except mess with their iPads and their social media devices. Okay. They don't go outside. Parents are scared to send them outside because they watch TV all the time and they think there's going to be a kidnapping on every corner. May I recommend you read this book called The Progress Paradox? It says, although we watch TV and we think that all the world is coming to an end and there's bad stuff happening, look at the statistics. It's not. But I think it takes a ton of people to play tennis or any sport, Billy, to produce a John McEnroe, a Jimmy Connors, a Pete Sampras. And my dad, we used to, as a family, would religiously watch the championships in tennis. And it was so much fun. The Sunday morning, 4th of July, McEnroe board. McEnroe's dad wearing that old bucket hat he used to always wear.
Yeah.
Great Irish Catholic family. And some people didn't like McEnroe's boisterous personality, but it drew people to watch. And Dad made a point when he said, Pete Sampras, he goes, he wins all the time, but he's about as boring as it gets. He just didn't have any charisma. And, compared to those other guys, I mean, you go to a tennis match. I used to go to the racket club in Memphis. Tommy Buford put that great Memphis indoor tennis championship for years.
Yeah.
And they lost it to Brazil. And you'd hear when Jimmy Connors was there, people be yelling out, let's go, Jimbo. I mean, he was from Belleville, Illinois.
He was.
Yeah. I mean, he walked by me, many times at that deal. Maybe he's 5'10", but he had thighs like, Bo Jackson or Herschel Walker. But where's our next one? And also I want you to talk about the women real quick. The daughter of the owner of the Buffalo Bills has created her own niche in life.
Indeed. Yeah. So I think what's happened, at least the women's have been fine. The Williams sisters and the younger players, Coco Gauff, they're all doing just fine. So American women's tennis has never fallen off the cliff, but on the men's side, it definitely has. And I think a couple of decades ago, maybe 15, 20 years ago, the USTA started trying to emulate, some of these tennis camps that you have in Florida where these kids go from all over the country and they move down there and they move in a dormitory. And it's just like, Paris Island. It's like dog eat dog.
Yeah.
And, we're going to forge the next champion out of a hot fire. They're going to be, battle tested from the age of 11. But we're going to take them out of their own environment, wherever in the country they might be from, and move them down to Florida, away from their family at a young age, and just mold a tennis player out of them. So it's rare that you'll see in this environment a kid from Illinois like Connors, kind of grow up and develop his game, but also, live a normal life and maybe play different sports. Agassi's from Las Vegas, but he, as a young guy, was one of the first ones that moved to Florida at 14 years old, I think, or younger, and went to the Bollettieri Academy, which is now IMG Academy down in Bradenton. And that was but he emerged so quickly on the scene and turned pro at 16. Everybody like, that's what we got to do. We got to do that. We got to go find these Agassi types all around the country, but herd them into a system in Florida and just drill the crap out of them, make them play each other every day. And, out of combat, we're going to have a champion emerge. But you're also dealing with young, players that are 13, 14. Is it smart to move them away from mom and dad at that young age where they're completely away from home? Maybe that's not the greatest idea. So I've been reading a lot about what McEnroe is trying to do. He's created a different kind of a tennis academy, but he's basing it in New York City because he believes that you got an urban environment. There's other things that a kid can focus on, not just tennis 24 hours a day. So to develop the whole person and to kind of tap into the creative aspect, which you need as a tennis player, you got to be able to, not be a robot, not be a ball machine. You got to be able to improvise on the fly. It's very much like military: adapt, overcome, improvise. If you're in the middle of a 5-set match and something's not working, and tennis is unique in that you can't be coached. You got to sit there on your own and figure out a strategy. There's no timeout. There's no let's in a basketball NBA game, let's come up with a play on the sideline on the grease board and figure something out. Tennis players have to figure it out on their own. Sure, there's a little bit of unofficial coaching coming from their friends in the stands, and maybe they're coaching the stands, but officially they're not supposed to be coached. They've got to figure it out. So the creative part of it has to be nurtured. And these tennis camps down in Florida where people move and live for 6 years maybe isn't the best way to accomplish that. And so McEnroe is trying to turn that back around and go, let's not move these kids out of New York, out of Illinois, and move them all down to Florida where they can play all day long. Let's keep them at home, and let's create other sports that they can play to develop their body physically, so they're not just burning out at 21 years old because they played tennis every day for 10 years. So I'm encouraged that, this tennis camp experiment maybe is starting to wane a little bit, and we're going to go back to, players have to become a champion on their own. I don't know you can build a champion. You can certainly train a champion. You can hone their technique. But can you? Something's got to be coming from within your heart.
Yeah.
To be a champion, and I don't know that you learn that completely with 100 other kids beating each other's brains out all day.
Well, I agree. I'm getting a lot of comments on this tennis. This is an interesting one from a listener. Andre Agassi was going out with Brooke Shields back in his day. That may have kept him from as focused as he needed to be. Lovely Brooke Shields. But also, I did not know this pretty cool thing. My friend Dave Cuddy was talking about it. He broadcast pro tennis for Fox Sports, worked with John McEnroe and Chris Everett and Andy Roddick and the Bryan brothers, doubles, among others. Everett, she's pretty wild. Her sister lived in Dallas and enjoyed her trips to Texas. And he said he played golf with Cliff Drysdale with ESPN. Tennis is a great game on TV. And it's interesting, sports, we talk about college football, NFL football, college, high school basketball, college, NBA. We're not teaching, if you're not working these kids and they're not enjoying it, but you're not teaching them and bringing them up the right way with the sport, they don't stick with it. Right. There's a saying among swimming parents, because all my kids swam and still do, and I love swimming. But I remember a swimming mom told me one time at the pool, she said, look, there's a lot of these kids out here that are really good when they're young, but they're called 15 and under wonders. Yeah. Because when they get that driver's license when they're 16, remember that Jamie Johnson song talking about smoking pot in the Baptist church parking lot? They go do other things. You can't make them stick with it. But you're right about tennis. And, we both know our friend from LaGrange when, he won the state championship at LaGrange Academy and gets over to Auburn. And the entire time he was there, he never picked up a tennis racket again because he said, I had enough of the parents hanging on to the chain link fence, screaming at their kids. And you talked about it, Billy. Again, you're a 4-5 player. You can only go to 5-0. You're a pro. I don't know what those guys are, but I love tennis. I did not grow up playing golf. If I did, it's such an obsessive game. I can see why people have to sign contracts with their wives that I'm only going to play 3 days a week or only twice a week or whatever. But you nailed it on this tennis. IMG Sports Academy. You get the kids down there and they just beat the hell out of each other. And now I think the Chinese have bought IMG for $1.2 billion. I don't like those kind of places, Billy. I think you ought to be part of your high school program. You can get coaching. The top 5% are going to get coaching. But, Billy, we haven't won a world major of the big four, the Australian Open, the French Open, Wimbledon, and the U.S. Open in 20 years.
Yeah, been a long time.
We're worried about a lot of stupid crap in America about dressing rooms and who goes where. Let's make tennis great. I love tennis. We ought to have more people out playing tennis. What did Tiger Woods do to golf?
Well, yeah, he obviously opened it up to the masses, and people realize that this is not necessarily a country club sport. Tiger Woods can make it to the top, so can I. So he offered a vision of, if you're tough enough, if you're good enough, if you're talented enough, you can overcome, any perceptions about whether you're meant to be out there on a golf course or not. And, right now there's been a wonderful story at Wimbledon with Chris Eubanks out of Georgia Tech. I was fortunate enough to see him play a couple of times here locally as a college guy because I live in Atlanta. And he just got to the quarterfinals and took Medvedev to deep into the match. He lost a chance to win the match in a 4-set tiebreaker, but lost it in the fifth. I think just, the fairy tale, was over. He ran out of gas, ran out of adrenaline in the fifth set. But Medvedev's no joke. That guy's number 3 in the world. It probably will win the tournament if Djokovic doesn't. So no shame in losing to a guy like that. But to get to the quarters, take him to the fifth, one of the best, steadiest players in the world, who's the same age. They're both 27. But here's the difference. Eubanks went to Georgia Tech, played, I think he was an All-American for 2 years, got a business degree at Tech, probably one of the very few men's touring pros that's got a college degree, because the sport demands that you hit the road early, and you only have a window to be a professional physically, and wasting 4 years in college is the received wisdom that you don't do that. But he did. He stayed in school, got a degree, and was practical about it. And he's like, I'm going to try to be a pro after I get out of college. And he is, taking 4 or 5 years to arrive, but he's got a huge game. He's 27 years old, and he's got a big backhand, a huge serve. And, we're going to hear a lot more from him. He'll probably ascend to be the number 1 American, but he's a smart guy, and he's hungry, and he's got a lot of charm. He made great television. He's obviously conquered a lot of new fans that didn't know who he was. If you don't follow college tennis, maybe you'd never heard of him before. And he languished in the top 200 for a while. But here he is. He'll probably, after this tournament, be in the top 50. Means he'll get into every Grand Slam, and he's going to make a lot of noise with that serve that he's got. So I think that Americans can get excited about a Chris Eubanks. Again, did not go to a tennis farm down in Florida. He grew up in Atlanta, stayed in town, and went to school at Tech, and, was obviously good enough to be an All-American twice. And I expect big things from him. But, it's encouraging and exciting to see a guy like that on TV, because you mentioned Sampras, brilliant player, technically brilliant, but a little dull. Eubanks has got overflowing personality, big smile, very animated on the court, but a gentleman at all times. And he's a guy that Americans can be proud of. And I was just tickled to see how far he went into the tournament, and I can't wait to see what he does the rest of the year.
Yeah, and Billy, watching Wimbledon over there, when Audrey and I were there in Atlanta last weekend with you, you look at the respect, the tradition, and the reverence for the game of tennis there at the All England, the tennis club there in Wimbledon. I've been over there. I hadn't been to Wimbledon, but I've been by it when I've been in London, and I love that. And you had a couple of your neighbors tell people one thing about living in Atlanta is you can pop on the MARTA, get on a plane, and be anywhere in the world for lunch, dinner, or breakfast.
Nonstop flights everywhere, even to Dubai. It's crazy.
Yeah. So what about your neighbors that went over there in that outdoor area where you just kind of camp out? What is that? That is what makes Wimbledon so special. And the U.S. Open, $50 T-shirts aside, is an incredible venue as well. But let's focus on Wimbledon as we get down toward the championship coming up this weekend. And why did they move it back? You gave a good story about that the other day.
Well, a couple of reasons why. Traditionally it came right on the heels of the French Open, which is on clay, and with very little turnaround time, everybody headed to play grass courts, which is a dramatically different surface. And it was hard to make that pivot from red clay to grass within a 2-week period. So they decided, let's add a week, give these guys a chance to play another tune-up tournament on grass just to acclimate their game and maybe rest a little bit, because it's tough playing on clay. Those are 5-set matches. Sometimes they last 4 hours, and you got to get your legs back under you. So they said, let's add a little time. And then secondly, the weather in England is not great. But as you get away from June and into July, you get into like a 4-week window where they've got pretty nice weather. And the British packed their schedule with the British Grand Prix, the U.S. Open, the British Open golf, and then Wimbledon. So they get all of their summer sporting events, they try to cram into July because they don't have a long summer season over there. But moving the Wimbledon final back the week after the 4th of July versus it used to sometimes be right on the 4th of July, which you pointed out. Basically they enhance the weather a little bit. They get the players chance to transition from clay to grass. But now they've put roofs on a couple of the show courts at center court number 1 all have roofs on them. So they are inoculated from the rainy weather a little bit, but they still have a lot of outside courts. And so the weather is an issue. Yeah.
You go to Europe, August is most of Europe is shut down. they're what they call on holiday. They mean take off a whole month. They go to the Costa del Sol of Spain, and you can live like a king down there and get a place for 3 or 4 weeks. It's not like a lot of Americans. My niece is down in St. Martin for the month, and it's a great place to go. But thing about Atlanta, just pop on a plane, 6-hour nonstop to Heathrow, you're there.
Yeah.
And so let's contrast you were talking about the ticketing situation and how unique it is. So I have a couple of neighbors that did a bucket list trip to England just a couple weeks ago, and they did not have tickets for the tournament. They went over there, and Wimbledon has a long tradition of what they call a queue, where you get up at 3 a.m., you can camp out or just you rough it and just sit there on a blanket, and you wait all night for a guaranteed ticket in the morning, but you could get ticket number 1 or ticket number 5,000, and the first 500 get to go to center court. The next 500 go to court number 1, and so on and so on. So even if you're 2,500 in line, you're going to get a ticket to get in, and you're going to get to see some tennis. You got to buy the ticket, but it's not scalped. It's a face value ticket. It's pretty affordable, maybe 25 or 30 pounds or something like that. And so my friends went and did it, and they were fortunate enough to get on court number 1. They were like number 750 in line. They got there at 3 a.m. They didn't have tents. The locals have tents and sleeping bags and all of that. But if you're traveling from America, you just show up and take your chances. And they did exactly that. And but think about the risk. They buy plane tickets, they get hotel, they go over there, and they show up at 3 a.m. and kind of see how it's going to go in line. And they were fortunate enough to get on court number 1, which is a significant court, a lot of good matches. And you can't do that at the U.S. Open. I mean, first of all, New Yorkers would cut in line and they would elbow you out of the way. So, now come on, like the German skiers. Yeah, polite British people versus who revere their traditions versus New Yorkers are like, hey, I see that guy trying to get your attention. I'm going to cut your place in line while you deal with that. I mean, so you could never institute something like that at Flushing Meadow. I've been to the U.S. Open many times, and it's a dog-eat-dog environment there. So you definitely have to go with tickets in hand to get to the Open. They don't even have scalpers anymore. A long time ago, they used to have a wooden platform from the subway station to the tennis center, and scalpers were walking around, and you could just walk up and buy a scalp ticket. But these days, because Citi Field has been built there now, they tore down Shea. That wooden platform still exists, but I guess they've got some pretty tough anti-scalping laws in New York. So you can't really count on seeing a bunch of scalpers like you used to. So you got to go on StubHub and get your ticket. So the U.S. Open could not institute a queue line like they do in England. Plus, there's a big park apparently right next to Wimbledon. It's a public park, but they allow people to line up in an orderly fashion. So they've got a very nicely organized situation there. Well, unlike the state of Alabama where scalping is legal, and I've got my man, he just goes by the name Snake from Atlanta. If I need tickets at Auburn and I can't get them any other way, I go see Snake. I said, man, what part of Atlanta do you live in? He goes, man, I mean, he is incredible. He's got tickets to everything. Snake, the scalper. Usually you can find him out in front of the Auburn Neville basketball arena. He's always there. Billy, this is a cool conversation, and we're going to bring in Franz Beard with us right now, GatorBetMedia.com. And Billy, Franz, we've been talking a lot about tennis, U.S. Open, Wimbledon, American tennis, what's happened to it. I love tennis, and you live in Florida where, golly, that is the home down in Bradenton of IMG Sports Academy. But, I don't know if you heard any of the conversation with Billy, and then Dave Cody, our friend, was listening and is listening and watching out in Washington, but he broadcast professional tennis on Fox Sports for years. And I love it. And what's your take on why we don't produce? Billy pointed out, have not had an American win one of the 4 major events, Grand Slam events, in 20 years. And who was that, Billy? Roddick, U.S. Open, 03. Yeah. Okay. Franz, what in the wide world of sports is going on?
Well, I think that kids have gravitated to other sports. I think a lot of people who used to play tennis are playing golf now, for example. And here's the thing is you can get on a golf tour. Like I may not be on the PGA tour, but the next tour that's underneath that, guys make $150,000 playing golf doing that. And I think that's where American interest has gone, is that it's gone there. I miss the days, and I'll tell you what else. I think high-tech rackets have taken so much of the interest away. It's now just the game used to be better when you had true shot makers like Bjorn Borg, and you had McEnroe. These guys, Jimmy Connors, these guys were real artists of the game. And that's the thing that's missing now, because it's all strength and power. And, we have a kid named Ben Shelton who's from Florida, and Ben Shelton is going to be the guy that breaks that string. He is from the University of Florida, won the NCAA championship. His dad was the tennis coach at UF, and he quit because he's going to be on the road with his son and manage him. And by the way, Ben Shelton's girlfriend is Anna Hall, who just won the U.S. National Heptathlon Championship. She's a Gator also. She won the NCAA a couple of times at Florida. If we'd had her, our women would have also won the national championship this year.
Yeah.
Well, and the same thing. But Ben Shelton is the perfect example. Ben Shelton's serve gets timed routinely at 150 miles an hour.
150.
150. Now,
wow.
Put a wooden racket back in these guys' hands. And all of a sudden, the only guy that I ever knew that had the big time serve like that with a wooden racket was Roscoe Tanner, big left-handed out of Chattanooga. And Roscoe Tanner routinely hit about 135 miles an hour. And that was with a wooden racket. But Rod Laver was pretty much the same way. And you look that they had a real arm, and then they're both lefties, and they had a real arm on their right side, and on their left side they had this huge tentacle.
Yeah.
and they hit booming serves. But the game has evolved, and I think the high tech of it has taken, kids want to get in games I think they feel they're more competitive and stuff like this. This is like you hit a serve and boom, it's ball comes back, you hit 2 or 3 more shots, it's done.
Yeah. Interesting thing. Dave Cody, again, longtime sportscaster in Austin, but did a lot of, freelance work as well with Fox and indoor tennis. And I know this had to have been when he was at Channel 13 in Memphis. Not kidding, at the U.S. Indoor in Memphis at the Racket Club that Tommy Buford and the great folks over there, Billy Donovan, late Billy Donovan, the Racket Club, that was awesome tennis, friends. And he said, I'm not kidding, at the U.S. Indoor in Memphis, John McEnroe stopped his match and made me turn off my light while I was doing a live shot up in the rafters.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? You can't be serious.
McEnroe, and the thing about it is McEnroe is such an amazing commentator on the sport, and his
brother Patrick is too.
Yes, he is very, very articulate, very much able to tell you the strategy behind it, etc. And I appreciate that. What I don't appreciate, however, is there are not that many shot makers anymore. Most of it's all about serve, go to the net, and put the ball away. And if you are a great server, you win. And it's kind of like people talking about Serena Williams. And I think Serena Williams was wonderful, but I think Martina. If all things had been equal, if you could take 25 years off Martina and let Martina play Serena, Martina would have smoked her. I promise you, because Martina was just, she was a true shot maker. Yeah. And you don't have a lot of those anymore. I mean, and that's not taking anything away from the greatness of Serena Williams. Serena Williams was as, she's a dominant and great player, but she came along in an era that was the big serve, boom, and overpower people.
Yeah.
And, Martina had a big serve too. People forget about that. But she was a shot maker. She grew up in the wood. And this is the advantage. And maybe, it's kind of like the reverse of it is you take these kids that play college baseball using a composite bat, and all of a sudden at the next level, they're having to play with wood, and all of a sudden they lose, all of a sudden that big power stroke they have becomes a warning track fly ball, and so we have these changes that are made that are going on in sports right now like that. It's kind of, it's funny. I was just on a conversation before I came on here with a friend of mine that lives on the Gulf Coast, and my friend said, we are in a society where every kid is sitting there at the dinner table like this with a phone.
Yeah.
In hand, and exactly. they're not having conversations, and our technology is changing. Our technology is changing the way we do everything. It's changed tennis. It's changed golf. It's like people talking about Tiger Woods, how great, and Tiger was a great golfer. But you want to know something? If you could have taken Tiger at his peak and Jack at his peak and gotten them on, somehow gotten them at their peak on the course together, I would have taken Jack every single time, because Jack had mental strength and shot making ability like nobody else I've ever seen. Yeah. And people talk about, well, look at this great shot Tiger did from, he hit it under 3 bushes over 4 trees, skipped the water, bounced onto the green.
Yeah.
Jack was always in the fairway.
Yeah. You've had a front row seat to a lot of these. Again, in Florida, so many tournaments and so many great athletes come out of there in all sports. And we know Dan McGill, longtime tennis coach at Georgia, just an incredible legacy there. But this country, we need, tennis is the byproduct of that. To have the John McEnroes and the Jimmy Connors and the Andre Agassi's, it takes a ton of kids playing tennis to get that many. You don't just show up and go, I'm that good. You have to go through hell and more to get there. But you're right. And even my youngest son, Max, who's out in Jackson, Wyoming all summer, he's my wild man, my free spirit. He's in 10th grade, wrote a term paper. I love to talk about it, but he said, technology is destroying our culture, our relationships, and our ability to communicate. He said, in the past, when we went to bed at night, we got on our knees and we thanked God for getting us through another day and counted our blessings. Now we go to bed looking at a screen. He said, in the past, when we woke up in the morning, we got down on our knees and we prayed for the thank you for another day. It's going to be a great day. God bless America. Now we look at a screen. I go back to a great speech that the actor who I love, Denzel Washington. He is what I would call a truth broker, friends.
Daytona Beach graduate.
Do what?
Daytona Beach mainland graduate.
He's from, wow. Okay. Well, I love what Denzel Washington says. He says, put your slippers by your bed on the floor every night. So when you put them on, you have to get down on your knees. And when you take them off, you have to get down on your knees and you can pray. Mm-hmm. He's a product, by the way, of the Boys and Girls Clubs. And I know the Huntsville Boys and Girls Clubs, Ray Mooring, one of our listeners and viewers in Huntsville, is very involved with that organization. And I think they've got their big banquet coming up with Cam Newton. Going to be a great deal. You get involved, but you're right. Staring at these screens. I mean, and I know in what I do in this show and in as a financial advisor, I get a lot. Yeah. I get a lot of messages, but you know what? You got to turn the damn thing off. Yeah. You got to shut her down. And happy birthday to my dad today, July 13th. He is 95.
Oh,
and,
my
he'll be working out today, riding the bike and lifting weights. Former powerlifting champion in the city of Memphis, benching 340 pounds. And I said, Dad, years ago, he had his knees replaced. I said, how'd you mess your knees up playing football? He goes, hell no, boy. Full squats. He used to do three sets of 12 reps at 360 pounds as a warm-up, and then he'd go from there. And in the, 4th of July at the pool at the club, they'd have a swim meet championship. a lot of the people just kind of going through the motions. He's out there to win it. But at 95, still rocking and rolling. As Miss Sala, my great Spanish teacher at Christian Brothers High School, my freshman year, she came up from Cuba in 1959 when Batista was deposed by Fidel Castro and Che Guevara, two of the most murderous tyrants and thugs in American history. She used to say if we fell asleep, she'd come pop you on the back, on the head, or pop you on the hand with a ruler, say, wake up. You'll catch up on your sleep when you're dead.
Oh, yeah.
I think about it every day, but she taught me Spanish to this day, how to roll my R's. But friends, you think about what is going on in American sports and everything like that. And we talk football, basketball, baseball, college, pro. We talk about the Atlanta Braves, the Tampa Bay Devil Rays. They just call them the Rays now, or the Devil Rays?
They're the Rays. They're the Rays.
Yeah, because a Devil Ray, or how about they didn't ever want to go with Stingray or a Manta Ray. And by the way, what does that hat say? I cannot read it.
Mine, Savannah Bananas.
Oh, that
if you
where can you get a Savannah Bananas hat?
If you experienced banana ball, then you have not lived. And they're having their world tour right now. Every single game is sold out. Everyone. And they're going to be in California. They're going to be all over New York. They're going to be all over the place. And people just love the idea of all of a sudden you've got a guy who's pitching from second base, and you have, my favorite is when they get all five guys on the infield and they huddle together and you don't know who's got the ball, and they all come to a stretch like this, all five of them, and then they all come through the motion, but you don't know which one of them has the ball when it comes back.
Savannah Bananas.
Oh, absolutely. Well, if you've not experienced banana ball, and Grayson Stadium is sold out, they have their own. Imagine this: baseball with its own pep band and marching band. They've got it. They sell out Grayson Stadium. The Savannah Bananas. I think Sports Journal said that the Savannah Bananas franchise is now worth $100 million
in Savannah, Georgia.
The
home of Ben Troop. Yeah, and we were trying to get Ben on the show, and he didn't respond. And I'm like, maybe he lost his phone.
Maybe see a banana ball game.
Yeah, he could be a banana ball game. Now we talk about great names. Okay, great names, and we're having fun right now. It is July 13th, middle of the summer, kind of cruising along. We got media days coming up.
Yeah,
and this is fun. Greatest names. High school football names: Cairo, Georgia, the syrup makers. Damn right. All right, here's another one: the Montgomery, the Biscuits. And then the Columbus Mudcats or Catfish baseball team in Columbus, Georgia?
Well, my favorite is Eastman, North Carolina, and this
Kodaks.
The Kodaks, the Eastman Kodaks. I always thought Frostproof Florida should be the refrigerators.
Yeah,
that would make a lot of sense if they had the refrigerators, but they don't. But you think about some names. You could have the Berlin Airlift, for example, the Singapore Slings.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, the Tokyo Rose.
Yep.
I mean, there are great names out there that should be had and could be had if only these people had any kind of imagination. Hickory, the team in the Carolina League in Hickory, North Carolina, the Hickory Crawdads.
How about the Hickory Sticks?
That would be good too, but they're the Crawdads. Corpus Christi, in the Texas League, the Hooks.
Yeah.
I mean, the mascot is a fish that's on a hook. Imagine.
Got one for you from a listener, Ronnie Van Zant, Jacksonville, Florida. The Toledo Mud Hens.
Oh heavens, yeah! I mean, made famous by the one and only Corporal Klinger. Toledo. was.
Yeah, that is right.
I mean, I think so many people miss out on great names. I mean, I'll give you an example of a great name, the Alabama Crimson Tide. There's only one like it. Whether you're an Alabama fan or an Auburn fan, irrelevant. It is a unique name that nobody else has. We're in a conference that has 3 sets of Tigers. Okay.
Yep.
We're about to get a name like the Oklahoma Sooners. What is a Sooner? Those are the people that in 1888 sneaked in past all the federal agents and claimed their land when they had the Oklahoma land rush. They were called Sooners. They were lawbreakers, but they got away with it. And unique names like that. Florida, there's only one other college team in America that's the Gators. There's one other. You know what it is? Allegheny College in Pennsylvania, the Allegheny Gators.
Really?
Stan Drayton, who was the running backs coach for Urban Meyer and is now the head coach at Temple University. Stan Drayton is probably the most famous Allegheny Gator of all time.
Did not know that. All right. Now, I do know this because of you. The most famous rattlesnake of all time would be.
They had him at the Sanford Zoo, Edgar, and he died.
Yeah. Recently.
Yeah. Now, there's an old photo that was circulating back in the 80s of somebody in South Georgia that killed like an 11-foot long rattlesnake. And somebody estimated that rattlesnake was probably 30 or 35 years old.
Oh.
When I was living in Taiwan, I was on this weekend trip, and I experienced watching an 11-foot long cobra go up in the air like this and was like waist high, and also out comes that hood, and that hood, we had him for dinner. He was actually very good.
Friends, I got to say this. I heard one time on one of the shows, it may have been Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom with Marlon Perkins and Jim Fowler. I think they said, maybe it was this show, but 15,000 plus people a year in India die from cobra bites. 15,000. Now, in the United States, in a typical year, I read this study, Maynard Cox was the snake bite doctor in Jacksonville, Florida. 12 people a year, and it's bad for those 12 or whoever and their families. It's horrible. 12 people a year die on average of snake bites in America. More than 45,000 people are bitten by snakes, but anti-venom emergency rooms are ready. But did you know that about 10 to 15 years ago, there was a man in Birmingham who had he had a herbatorium with a bunch of reptiles, cobras, black mambas, brown snakes, you name it. And they got loose. And the 5 counties around Birmingham were all on high alert until the temperature got down below 40 degrees, which would kill them for those kind of snake bites. You realize that just a few snakes could put 5 counties walking around on eggshells. And, you just, again, I'm Marlon Perkins. While we're flying high above Dead Man's Creek, Jim Fowler is down below wrestling with the crocodiles. It's good to know his family's premiums have been paid, and he's covered by our comprehensive life and disability. So if he survives and he's limbless, his family's covered. And they would always, but who always got invited on the Tonight Show? Jim Fowler.
Oh, heavens, yeah.
Marlon was a great guy.
I always loved when they brought the gal from the San Diego Zoo.
Yes.
She always had these very, very cool creatures that she'd bring along, and Carson was extraordinary. Of course, it's funny that you would bring that up, because about 2 nights ago, I happened upon the old clip on YouTube of Ed Ames on Carson when he was Mingo, and he was showing Johnny how to throw a tomahawk. Mm-hmm. And his first one hits. They have an outline of a person up there, and Ed Ames throws his, and it catches right in the place where a guy wouldn't want to get hit. And it breaks everybody up. And finally, after everybody stopped laughing, Ed Ames tells Carson, he says, "You want to try now?" And he says, "I don't think I could hurt him anymore."
I don't think you could. All right, friends, got just a few minutes left. Let's switch gears now. We got SEC Media Days coming up Monday. Yeah. Greg Sankey will do his annual State of the SEC address. We know about NIL. We know about the transfer portal, what they are. We're 2 years and change from July 1st of 21 when NIL came about. And other than some notable exceptions, I don't see a lot of new millionaires on the Forbes 500 list coming out of NIL. Again, a few kids at some schools. Bama may have 5 or 6 getting some big money. Other than that, it's little to nothing. But here's the question I've got to ask you. The state of Texas, and I absolutely respect the sovereign rights of all 50 states. Through those 50 states, power is then handed to the federal government. It's granted, but we are 50 separate states. Yeah. Texas, which they have the right to, has their own law on NIL. And they're saying, we don't give a damn what the NCAA says. This is the way we do it in Texas. Now, Greg Sankey, the SEC, when Oklahoma and Texas come in, 16 schools will be members. Spread out over 12 different states? Well, is he going to, you think, say, look, when someone asks him that question, how are we going to slow down? Because Texas and Texas A&M, between the two of them, have over $60 billion in endowment money. $42 billion at Texas, $18 billion in change at A&M. You think Greg Sankey's going to be asked that question, or he'll just bring it up voluntarily that if you're going to be a member of the SEC, you've got to conform to our rule on NIL, but do they even have an NIL rule yet? It's a lot to unpack, but you are the unpacker.
Well, here's the dumb thing that happened. The NCAA, in its infinite wisdom, says that, okay, NCAA rules supersede all state laws. That's not going to work. I'm sorry. That will go to court where the NCAA, which is like 0 for 54 bazillion and 1, will lose once again. They lose every court case. And yet for some reason, these people, and here's the problem with the NCAA. It's run by academics who don't have a clue. They live in their little castles and their ivory castles, and they don't have a clue about the real world. College campuses are not the real world. I hate to break it to them, but they're not. They weren't, they aren't, they won't be. Okay. And until the NCAA gets somebody in charge, or else the schools break away and start their own organization. And that's the only way it's going to happen, Rob, is they're going to have to start a brand new organization, and they're going to have to tell the NCAA, it's been swell. Do what you do best. Run events. Forget about trying to run sports. You run the tournament, and, you make it all fun and games and decide all this other stuff. We will run the sports themselves. Sports are whether we like to admit it or not, this is a business. This is not a sport any longer. It is a business. Sports are it's like, we hear this thing about, well, what you're seeing is the symptom of the disease down in his liver, Think of sports as the disease, as the symptom of the business, okay? They're like the flower that grows, okay? The stem is here and the roots are down here, and the flower, we see the flower, we don't pay attention to the stem and the roots. And that's what's got to happen, is the stem and the roots has to be grounded and run by people who are real business people and not academics. And
that's
until that happens. And I believe Greg Sankey, this is what he believes in his heart. But I think that Greg Sankey being the most powerful man in all of sports, not just college sports, but all of sports. Greg Sankey, being the most powerful man that he is, keeps it close to his vest. I believe that he understands this and knows this. And he is quiet. The way he does things is behind the scenes.
Yeah.
You don't see how he does things, how he puts things together and makes them happen. But I can tell you this, those schools that voted for the 8-game schedule against the 9-game, which is preferable, you watch when they make the schedules in 2025.
Yes.
You watch the schools that got that, all of a sudden are going to end up playing Alabama on the road, LSU on the road, Texas on the road. They're going to end up with they're going to play 5 road games, and they're going to be the 5 hardest road games you can imagine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that's how Greg Sankey works. He doesn't get mad, but he always gets even.
He gets ahead. You're right. Hey, unfortunately, we have run out of time. Great show today. We started off Dudley, Dawson, Hogville.net, Gary Harris, Tide 100.9, Channel 23 in Tuscaloosa, Billy Roberts over in Atlanta, talking a lot about American tennis, Wimbledon. Where's American tennis headed? And then Franz Beard, along with Frank Duffy, the 2 most interesting men in the world, and covered a lot. Tennis, college sports, pro sports, the future, and Greg Sankey. I think you're right. He's very smart. Doesn't get mad, gets even. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. No other country in the world is filled with citizens who wake up every morning and think, what can we do to help people, not just in our country, but around the world? I don't think there's another country in the world that ever spends a nickel's worth of time wondering what they can do to help America. All we've ever asked for when we fight wars to defend them on their soil is a place to bury our fallen soldiers. We are the greatest country. Act like it. Never miss an opportunity to go help people who've helped you along the way, and count your blessings, because I'm still batting 1,000 with this one. I have never in my life known anyone or met anyone who renounced their U.S. citizenship to move to another country. But people will float on pieces of styrofoam 91 miles across shark-infested waters to land on the shores of Florida to live in the greatest country in the history of the world. We'll be back tomorrow. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Savannah Bananas. Check him out. Franz has got that. He's up right now for the hat of the year, the Hody, H-O-T-Y. But anyway, great show as always. Subscribe to our channel, and we'll be back tomorrow. Got another loaded show. Have a great one, everybody. We're out of here.